1999 The Podcast is a production of the Cage Club Podcast Network. For more podcasts on movies, comics, and all things pop culture, head to cageclub.me. To contact us with questions, comments, or just to say hi, send us an email at 1999@cageclub.me. You can find me on Twitter at probablyrealjb and Joey at soulpopped. And you can follow the show on Twitter at 1999 The Podcast. To support the show, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. The show is written, produced, and edited by us. Welcome to 1999 The Podcast, the only podcast ever to acknowledge the existence of the year 1999. I am John Brooks.
And I'm Joey Lewandowski.
And all of that is true. And the FCC wouldn't let us say it if it weren't true. Thank you, before we start, to all of you who reviewed and rated on Apple Podcast in the last couple weeks, especially to Alexis, who's a listener that we picked up from our Return to the Pod fandom. We greatly appreciate that. Please, please, please continue to do so. We know that reviewing on Apple Podcast is like getting on an airplane these days in terms of the logistics of doing that, but we appreciate the time, and thanks.
I will also say you can't review it everywhere. Like, you can't review on Spotify. No one really listens elsewhere. So if you listen on Apple Podcasts, or even if you don't, if you have access to it, it just means, I don't know how their algorithm works, but it matters. So
it bleeds over to other platforms somehow. Though you can rate on Spotify now, right? You can,
I think so, yes. So the other thing, and this is in the weeds, but Stitcher is now owned by Simplecast or something. So I submitted a new show, and it's now on Pandora too. Things just disseminate out into the world. But the in terms of traffic, in terms of who actually has ownership, it's Apple and Spotify, and that's basically it. So if you listen somewhere else, like I do, God bless you. But otherwise, just rate on Apple Podcasts, please. Thank you.
And Good Pods is a good place also to listen and to review if you use that platform, which is a really, really good platform. But anywhere that you review and rate is helpful. It all sort of accumulates into us being further out into the world. So, all right, on to the movie of the day. We are at July the 9th, back in the summertime. And the middle of the longest streak of the year in which no movie held the number one spot for more than 1 week. This movie debuted after The Phantom Menace had held the spot for 5 weeks, followed by 1 week each of Tarzan, Big Daddy, and Wild Wild West. Starring Jason Biggs, Alyson Hannigan, Chris Klein, Mina Suvari again, Thomas Ian Nicholas, Tara Reid, Eddie K. Thomas, Natasha Lyonne, Sean William Scott, Chris Owen, Shannon Elizabeth, Eugene Levy, Jennifer Coolidge, and all of Blink-182, written by Adam Hertz, a guy who would go on to do almost nothing else, and directed by brothers Paul and Chris Weitz, who would go on to do quite a bit else. Today's movie is the teen comedy juggernaut American Pie. Joey, What's American Pie about?
It's about a few different things. A group of 4 seemingly nerds, but who also have hot girlfriends, are trying to lose their virginity by graduation, while other people are just trying to, have a good time at the end of their senior year and also maybe have sex and just experience life in the year 1999. Are you proud of me that I got the year right?
Literally the easiest part.
And somehow I cannot do it literally anytime.
I keep thinking about the different weird ways that this movie and our movie from last episode have weird overlaps, including a certain song that we'll talk about later on. But also that it's neither of them have a main character, or it just kind of depends on who you like, and you can kind of follow a different character each time.
And I think what's interesting about that is that when you say what's it about, it's about there's 5 or 6 different stories, but it's just mostly about sex in high school, kind of. That's what this boils down to.
The sex pact is kind of, I guess, the driver of the narrative, but it's not really about that either. So anyway, filmed on a tiny budget of somewhere between $11 and $12 million, which is again $1 or $2 million less than our movie from last time, the indie star-free movie 10 Things I Hate About You. American Pie made back its budget and then some in its opening weekend, earning nearly $19 million at the domestic box office. It went on to gross more than $100 million domestically and $235 million worldwide. So quite a return on investment, although not quite the return on investment of Blair Witch Project. Certainly anybody would look at that budget and that grossing and say, well, that's a big hit. And it was. But also, like 10 Things that had basically no star power, as I mentioned. The most famous cast member at the time was Hannigan, who had spent 3 seasons playing Willow Rosenberg on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, followed by Nicholas, who had starred in a couple of popular family movies in the 1990s. Both Klein and Suvari stars were in the midst of rising, thanks to 2 other 1999 movies, one of which had yet to be released, but we talked about it a couple weeks ago. That, of course, is our favorite movie, American Beauty. Natasha Lyonne was a veteran, but less than a household name, and Biggs, who anchored the movie, had stuck to some supporting TV roles, as had Reed, who also showed up in another big 1999 movie, and Scott, perhaps the biggest breakout star of this movie, had a paper-thin resume coming into it. So I think that's one thing that, again, we don't necessarily appreciate as much today, is that we know, most people know who a lot of the people in this movie are now. Of course, Alyson Hannigan got, I think, way even more famous. But yeah, these were like all nobodies at the time, which it's kind of wild to think about. Like the 2 biggest teen movies of that year were basically had no star power whatsoever.
Yeah, and I feel like it's weird to reflect back because, like, I don't know, you could really, I mean, maybe some of these people, like, because of this movie, instantly became bigger things. But it's interesting to look back on a
Yeah.
thing 5, 10, 20 years later and see, like, oh, they all became something, or like none of them ever panned out to anything. Like, you look at Freaks and Geeks, you're like, oh, almost all those people are like the biggest movie stars, of the last, or at least indie comedy or whatever, right? But like, you look at another thing, it's like, oh, none of them, like, they all were things that people thought were going to be a thing and then weren't a thing. But this has a pretty good track record.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting one here is Jason Biggs, who never became someone who could anchor a movie, but kind of went back to doing what he was doing before this, which was like sitcoms and supporting roles, and he's had a pretty decent career doing that, and like that's really his lane. It's, this movie kind of tried to make him a star, but like he's not a star. It's just not sort of, he just doesn't have that, right? Whereas Sean William Scott, who is a minor supporting character here, like easily, I think it's fair to say, is like the biggest star to come out of this movie.
But that star would burn bright and die fast. But this was the beginning of that era of like, oh yeah, he's the guy.
Well, in theory, the 2 biggest, most established stars were Eugene Levy and Jennifer Coolidge, who actually only shows up at the very end of the movie, although her character sort of permeates the narrative in a funny way. Neither were exactly household names either, with the teen audience especially, though Levy became much of the film's success story, having established himself as the fan favorite scene stealer and going on to appear in more franchise films than any other actor. Levy's standout role in the film is at least in part attributable to the fact that he improvised most of his lines, which was a condition he set for agreeing to take the role. So almost nothing that Jim's dad says is actually in the script. And Levy basically just entered into the scene and made stuff up as he went along. And that's, I think, something that you can tell, or at least once you know that that's what's happening, a lot of those scenes make a lot more sense and are even funnier. The Weitz brothers themselves were also kind of brand new to the scene, having established themselves as the writers of the critically acclaimed, now largely forgotten animated curiosity, Ants. I'd forgotten about this. I knew this at the time. I remember early sort of trade magazines talking about the development of this movie before it came out, and there was a lot about ants and about how the Weitz brothers were the new sort of like, wonderkind players in Hollywood because of how great the screenplay was and what a big hit the movie was. And like, I don't, I whenever you say the title, I'm like, oh, that movie. But it's so forgotten. Right? Like nobody watches this movie anymore, right? Am I wrong?
I don't think so. I think you're spot on.
Have you seen it?
No.
Right? With the question mark, because maybe you've seen it, but you don't remember having seen it. Look, this was DreamWorks' attempt at butting in on Pixar, which was brand new at the time. We'll get back to Pixar very soon. But Pixar, at the time of this movie's release, had only had 2 theatrical releases, Toy Story and A Bug's Life. And Ants was basically, I mean, they were both movies about ants, right? Like, and Ants was, I'm not sure, helped by the fact that the Pixar movie was about the same thing. And it was a very strange animation style that DreamWorks was working with here. And like, didn't have the charm and charisma of Pixar. But one thing people forget is that Ants got like insanely good critics reviews. Like it was has a I think a 90 has a 90 something percent on Rotten
Really?
Tomatoes, and
I
like
don't so okay, here it's this is like a Volcano Dante's Peak or Armageddon, the other movie, whatever. Like this is
Deep Impact. Yeah. Yeah.
where I don't think I've seen either. I might have seen one or both.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure I haven't seen A Bug's Life because I'm just like, I haven't seen all the Pixar movies, but like I don't feel like a pressure, but like Ants had Woody Allen?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is like fucking weird.
Wild.
It's like the Avatar of CGI movies. Like nobody talks about it anymore, even though I guess it was pretty big at the time. Although I guess we're going to be talking about Avatar again pretty soon because there's like 9 sequels coming out. So anyway, back to American Pie. The film began largely as a semi-autobiographical labor of love for Hertz, who, like the film's characters, attended high school in Michigan, specifically East Grand Rapids High School, which is why the school in American Pie is called East Great Falls High School. Get it? Grand Rapids, Great Falls.
Very, very funny.
And while the original title of the film was East Grand Rapids, Hearst actually wrote the screenplay under the incredibly self-aware title, quote, untitled teenage sex comedy that can be made for under $10 million that most readers will probably hate, but I think you will love.
All right. Okay.
I mean, sure. It'd be cool if that was the actual title, but again. Note, it was actually made for slightly over $10 million, but that's probably because of all of that Eugene Levy money they had to shell out. This was also one of 2 movies who had to fight and submit several recuts for an R rating from this year. We'll talk about the other one shortly. But the alternate version is now available on streaming and home video. It's basically the NC-17 cut, which is a good time capsule of what qualified as NC-17 2 decades ago, most of which is tame compared to what you would get on your average television show these days, especially on these streaming services. So I watched the super duper uncut, explicit, badass, whatever version, right, that you can get on Amazon. And I like forgot that this was the forbidden cut that would have been NC-17. And it's just funny that that's NC-17 now.
Well, like this is the peak in the era where they were selling like I know that I'm like the only person who still buys movies in physical form. Like I understand that, and like they still try to like the unrated director's cut. Like nobody cares about that anymore. Just like give me the movie. It's only a big deal when it's like the Snyder cut or like they add like a huge movie that they add scenes to, like Spider-Man back in theaters now with like the extra fun edition or the more fun, who knows, whatever. But this is the peak era of like, this is what the theaters didn't want you to see. And I remember buying
Yeah.
that from Mr. and Mrs. Smith being like, so like are Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie gonna like have sex in this movie now? It's just like, no, there's like a 50 seconds more of like nonsense. Like it doesn't matter, but like it's enough to like get people to buy with the hope. But this you're saying is actually, because I only watched on Peacock the version that I think it's just a theatrical version. So I didn't see I don't know if I've ever seen the like NC-17 cut.
Yeah, and it's not much different. And like the NC-17 cut has no like actual sex and like very little nudity. And it's just really funny that this qualifies as NC-17. I guess like the standards of what NC-17 should be would be different when you have a movie that's specifically targeting a teenage audience. Like I guess that kind of makes sense, right? Like I've seen NC-17 movies that are way worse than American Pie, but like no 16-year-old would want to see that, you know what I mean? So I don't know how the ratings board worked, but either way, whatever they did to this one, which were some very minor things, they got the R rating, and the rest, as they say, is history
Or herstory.
or herstory. Well, it's written by a guy named Hertz, so
Not who I was referring to, but sure.
Herstory. I know you were not. All right. There's a version of this movie in some universe that features Jonathan Taylor Thomas as Jim and Bill Murray as his dad, both of whom turned the movie down. And this, like 10 Things, is also a movie notable for not starring Eliza Dushku, who was also passed up for one of the girl roles. It's not clear who exactly, but you could probably take a guess. I think she'd be great as the Natasha Lyonne character, but I don't think anybody's ever better than Natasha Lyonne at being Natasha Lyonne.
And also, like the Natasha Lyonne character, if it's not her, is going to hit completely different.
Correct.
And might not be memorable at all. I mean, maybe, but probably far less memorable just because it's not Natasha Lyonne.
Very, very, very 1999 trivia from IMDb here. Nick Gray, a then 17-year-old in suburban Atlanta, got his hands on an MPAA-rejected NC-17 work print of the film, still titled Great Falls. months before the film came out and showed it to friends. Excited about what he says is an honest portrayal of high school life, he started an unauthorized website devoted to the film. Producer Warren Zeed saw the site and invited Mr. Gray to a preview screening in Atlanta. Mr. Gray also met and had lunch with Shannon Elizabeth. He wound up getting a part in American Pie 2, but in a deleted scene, which can be found on the DVD. I knew this and had completely forgotten about it until I read it. Um, but it's really interesting because, again, like we talked about when we talked about the Phantom Menace, the increasing role that the sort of fan website, um, like early release set spies thing that was happening on the web at that time, and how that was starting to really actually play into the way that movies planned their marketing, and also sort of used this and leveraged this as part of the marketing. So when we think about like Blair Witch Project, you can see, of course, like the generation of buzz was a big part of why that movie worked, and like deliberately. This was kind of an organic thing, but like I now remember that one of the reasons people talked about this early was because of this kid, the 17-year-old with a website, who was like, "Oh, I saw this movie and it's great," and like I'm gonna do a fan site devoted to it, and there was a sort of like weird internet buzz long before it came out.
Do you think there's any chance that he was a studio plant? Like, that's some galaxy brain thinking, right? Like, that's, like, something that they might do more today where it's maybe possibly going to, or maybe not today. Today, we're probably too, like, jaded, but, like, maybe 10 years ago where, like, or Cloverfield era, maybe 15 years ago, where it's like we can use the internet, let's drum up this sort of organic, viral whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be, I mean, if that was a studio plant in 99, that or 98 or whenever, that would have been crazy.
Yeah, no, what you're referring to is something that did happen a lot, but I think it happened like after this. Like I know that a lot of studios sort of laundered buzz through Ain't It Cool News by doing this after the fact. This, I think, was a genuinely organic thing of like some hacker kid who like found a pirated copy of one of the early cuts and developed an organic fan website, because there's no like precedent for this at all. Like this is
Sure.
kind of like the first time specifically this sort of thing happened. But you're right that it would happen repeatedly, or at least there was this like fake version of this that was happening where like studios would create a teenager essentially to say like, oh, I got my hands on an early cut of this movie and like here's my review, it's so awesome, you're gonna love it, right? And Ain't It Cool News, which had basically no journalistic standards, would be like, oh, cool, and like put it up on their site and just kind of give free fake press to movies before they came out, and it often worked, right? It was a way of kind of giving creating a kind of a loyalty to a movie even before it ever came out, regardless of whether or not it was any good. No, from what I know, like this was a legit kid who like was the American Pie fan of all time. Anyway, so I think what really sets this movie apart from other movies of its ilk is that it transcended the typical rule of teen comedies, which is to say that the opinion of critics here was actually relevant when it normally isn't. Like most teen comedies don't just ignore what critics say and sort of build a commercial success on other factors. And that's not to say that American Pie was showered with the same sort of awards type hardware as other movies with American in the title of that year, but critics were surprisingly charmed by it. It has a respectable 61% critics and audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and an equally respectable score of 58 on Metacritic. Among the positive reviews were Roger Ebert, who called the movie, quote, cheerful, hardworking, and sometimes funny. And Variety's Todd McCarthy, who called the movie, quote, a cheesy homage to a level of horniness Austin Powers could only imagine. But the most glowing of the major reviews was from Kenneth Turan in the LA Times, who in a review titled The Heart in American Pie wrote, quote, American Pie is the darndest thing. Both warm-hearted and foul-mouthed, this unlooked-for hybrid of South Park and Andy Hardy uses its surface crudeness as a sucker bait to entice teenage audiences into the tent to see a movie that's as sweet and sincere at heart as anything Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland ever experienced. I told you earlier that I found something, an artifact of the year, that I couldn't resist talking about, which is that the fact that Kenneth Turan wrote this review and wrote this very sort of glowing, positive review of American Pie, talking about its sweetness and sincerity, had a vocal and angry backlash by readers of the Los Angeles Times. One somewhat hilariously pearl-clutching letter to the editor from someone named Wanda Martin somehow managed to rope Columbine into the whole thing, and she wrote to the LA Times the following, quote, I feel it is imperative to express to you the shock and revulsion I felt when I read Kenneth Turan's review, A Heart in American Pie, July 9th. The Times purports to be a family newspaper. To see that article was astonishing. And, you know, family newspapers, I'm sure you're familiar with sitting around the kitchen table with the LA Times. I mean, you're younger than me, but like we all did this as a kid, right? And Grandpa would read the sports page out loud, and we'd all do interpretive.
We all became Dodgers fans
skits.
that summer.
Yeah, normal thing. It is hard to know which was more shocking, to see brutally frank descriptions of the grossness contained in the film, or to see the film described as warm and endearing. Let me in turn be brutally frank in a different way. Columbine was not caused by access to guns. Vote them up or down, I care not. But by a society where all values of decency and restraint are disappearing, and when promoted, are mocked. This is not an argument for censorship. By all means, let adults inflict the crudeness of American Pie on themselves. Just do not inflict it on unsuspecting readers, especially with a tone that breezily implies that there is something wrong with anyone who does not choose to endorse its quote-unquote values. I hope that you will not only publish this, but in the future demonstrate that this regrettable lack of taste was an aberration.
I wonder if that was also a studio plant.
It's almost unbelievable. But it's not the only one. There are a couple of letters that the LA Times published about this article that were like not as sort of flamboyant as this one is, but we're like, how dare Kenneth Turan write this positive review of this disturbing movie? Yeah, I don't know. I don't think a studio plant would bring up Columbine. I just don't.
No,
I don't see that.
Or is that exactly what they would do to make you think it's not a studio?
If that is the case, that's very disturbing. But no, I don't see anybody crossing that line. I think only Wanda Martin can cross that line. But my God, what a use of your time.
Well, it's nice to know that in 1999, people still had nothing better to do with their time. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
And we think that people just blamed Columbine on Marilyn Manson and Doom. It's nice to know that they also blamed it on American Pie.
Sure.
So, a movie that came out several months after Columbine happened. Anyway, we watched it again, and we'll see how it holds up. So to have that conversation, Joey, who are our guests today?
Our guests today for American Pie are the hosts of the Doom Generation podcast, Tessa and Nicole.
We'll be right back with Tessa and Nicole after the break. Welcome to 1999, the podcast.
All right.
To Tessa and Nicole.
Hello.
From Doom Generation. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Pretty good.
You?
We're good. Joey, you good?
I am good. I mean, I was better before I had to rewatch this movie.
Well,
I was thinking, I'm going to put it out there. I hate this movie. I don't know, like, it doesn't really correlate. You know how people say, like, you have to eat your veggies before you get dessert? Like, it's a weird, like, the veggies in this case are bad movies or movies that I don't want to watch. And, like, most of the rest of the season is stuff that I do want to watch.
right.
I don't know that I hate this movie. I watched it for the first time when I was 30 years old, like 5 years ago. Like, I missed it. This has never been my kind of humor. I liked a few more things about it this time, but, like, this is just not for me. And so we'll talk about it, but, like, I am not coming into this with a place like let's talk about, like, American Pie, baby.
Right. Like, it wasn't beloved for you at all.
No.
So yeah, no.
I mean, I definitely,
Yeah.
I saw it when it came out, but
So did I.
I'm not going to say it holds up.
No, it definitely didn't hold up. It really wasn't as funny as I remember it being, but I'm the same age. Like this was my graduation
Yeah, that was
year.
Tessa's graduating
So
class.
for me,
this was her high school
Mhm.
it
year.
was kind of like, oh, this was like part like this, and what is it? Can't hardly wait.
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah.
that was my year. So it was like, this was my high school experience, kind of. And I'll get into that later too, where they straight up ripped off something from us in this movie.
somehow 20 years ago?
Somehow 20 years ago. No, not
3
me
years
and
ago?
you.
Oh.
No.
From your high school.
Yeah, from like my high school or whatever, like a thing that me and my girlfriends had. Like it wasn't a pact, it was making the cut. And it was getting laid before school started.
I've never
Oh my
had
God.
that. I did not have that.
They stole
Before
it.
we do any of that stuff, do you guys want to talk about your own podcast and explain what that's all about?
Sure. So initially we were going to do all kinds of things from the 80s and 90s, our childhood, but it's become apparent that we are a movie podcast. And we have focused pretty much solely on movies. We've done a couple shows, a couple side specials, but we're just like super casual comedy, whatever. Like
we're just talking
unscripted.
about movies that you have seen,
Just like hanging out with
right.
us in my house
Yeah.
or in my garage, having a drink and just reminiscing about
that
old
movie
times and memories of these movies.
And there's a lot of side tracks and side stories,
Yes.
and we lose our place an awful lot, and
It's chaotic.
very much so. But it's a fun ride, so I think so.
Being of a similar age to you, I really enjoyed your Nickelodeon episode. I just watched the Nickelodeon documentary. It's on Hulu now. Have you guys seen that?
I have
No,
not.
no.
One of
So
our
good. It's-
listeners on Too Fast, Too Forever, I think, is in that documentary. You talking about the orange years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of them,
Yeah.
I think our friend Wes is in that documentary, I believe.
Nice.
Oh, that's cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, we just did 10 Things I Hate About You, and Larissa Olenek is also in that documentary, talking about her time on Alex Mack.
Oh,
So,
yes.
Well, just very quickly, as we're talking about 10 things, this is now 2 movies in a row that uses the song 1 week. So
One
we are,
week.
you
Oh,
know we're
yes.
in 1999 when we cannot
Yes.
escape this goddamn
my
song.
God, it's been
I feel like
about an
it's
hour since I heard
everywhere.
that song.
Yeah. I feel like it's everywhere.
Well, no,
I
that one
forgot-
and the other one, that Harvey Danger song, and
Oh,
this one
yes.
too. And I
Oh,
like,
Black Hole Sitta?
yeah.
Yes,
It's
I
a
like-
great fucking song.
I
so,
discovered
you
that I
know.
still know all the words.
Oh, nice. The things you
Paranoia.
Everybody's coming to get me. Yes, I had to like
so good.
The Rolodex in my brain was like, nope, there it is. I found the file. Here it is, and I was really enjoying that. That was done.
Joey made a really big deal of the 1 week thing in our 10 Things episode. And Joe, when I was rewatching this, I laughed out loud.
Well, I think
it comes on twice in this movie.
I think what's kind of like, important is maybe the wrong word, but important about this movie is that it's going to act as a kind of like a hub for a lot of other movies. Like, we'll get into it, but Mina
Mhm.
Suvari is back from American Beauty.
Mhm.
We're going to do Chris Klein in Election at some point. Wink, wink.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like there's a lot of actors in here who have, and Natasha Lyonne, but I'm a Cheerleader, right? That's also this year. So like there's a lot of movies that these actors have been in that we will have already covered or will cover again. And then on top of that, also 1 week. But this is kind of like because no one's really in a ton of this movie, it's just kind of all over the place. Like everyone's doing a little bit here and there. They're all able to do another project. And like, this is kind of like a center spoke on this wheel of 1999, I guess, teen comedies kind of.
Like the new Brat Pack kind of, like
they
the
were trying to
teen
do
actors that were in kind of everything.
Well, it tried to be though, but like it's weird because when you look at the post sort of movie career of most of these actors, that didn't really go any well for a bunch of different reasons, right?
Right.
Like,
I found myself asking myself, like, whatever happened to that guy?
Yeah,
Whatever happened to her? Whatever happened? Yeah, like, oh shit. Well, I forgot Natasha Lyonne was in this movie.
So did I.
Yes.
And, completely forgot. And she's a pretty main
she's
character.
Not like just a bit player.
No.
She's got a fairly main role.
Right. And I forgot she was in it.
Yep.
I forgot her role was as big as it is.
Yeah.
I thought she was much more I remembered her being a far more of a cameo character than she
she doesn't have a ton to do. She's just like, hey, yes, sex is great. You should have it. Like that's kind of her entire role in this movie.
She was kind of like an anchor though, in like a couple of different things.
Because
she was like,
she had the thing with Finch.
Right.
And
she's like friends with Vicky and like she's figuring all that stuff out. So she was kind of like a solid background player.
And she feels the most kind of realistic of all the characters, honestly.
Is
like,
she the biggest star
kind of
from this movie? Like, is she the
now,
one?
Maybe.
Because, like, I mean,
think
obviously
she might
Jennifer
be.
Coolidge is still acting and still, like, in big-ish stuff, like White Lotus and things like that. But
Oh, we stand a legend.
Yeah, I'm not counting Eugene Levy.
Well,
Right.
I will
Yeah.
also
Well,
say, while I bring her up, that there was that news that came out like a week or two ago that she
Yes.
said that she's like slept with a couple hundred people or got over
Yep.
100 people or something because of this role,
200
which
plus because of this.
Nice.
in which
Hell
case,
yeah.
hell yeah, get it.
Get
That's
it.
really
Yeah.
funny.
Get it
For
Miss
one scene in this
Coolidge.
movie, a picture on a wall
Uh-uh.
and one scene, sex with 100 or 200 people, like absolutely do
Why
that.
not?
Yeah.
Why not? Get it. I went and looked her up today, and she's like never been married. She just does her own thing, doesn't have
Nice.
any
Yep.
kids. Like she's just
Yep.
out there being Miss Jennifer Coolidge,
You do
legend,
you.
right? Absolute legend. So, absolutely. Yeah, that was the new thing that she had gotten
Yeah,
laid.
I saw
A
that
whole big
recently.
bunch.
We'll talk more about the cast a little bit later
Mhm.
on. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, Tara Reid had a very kind of public falling
Mm.
apart. There's a lot of stuff that has happened behind the scenes with a lot of these actors
Yeah.
that is sort of tragic and unfortunate. But some of them, I think, are sort of finding their footing again. But let's talk about your first experience seeing the movie. You guys saw it at the time it came out, yeah?
In the
Um,
theaters. Yeah.
In the theaters?
Yep.
Were you like excited to go see it? Was it like an opening day movie for you guys? Or
No.
Yeah, I don't know if it was opening day. But
I don't think
feel
I
like
did
it was
opening days.
No, not really. It was a fun thing because Nicole, was in band,
Mm.
and those trailers. Yep, and those trailers
This one
played
time?
that one time in Bandcamp line,
Mhm.
and it was a dirty comedy and whatever. And so I
Right.
think me and my band friends went to go see it. And we were like,
I'm
yup.
picturing this. I'm picturing this. I
Yep,
picture you
Bandcamp
all
is sex
outside
ed.
the door at
Nicole,
Stifler's party.
what did you play in band?
I was in the drum line. I played bass drum. I was the bass
Nice.
captain.
Oh, very cool. Oh, badass. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not a flautist, like
No,
Nicole.
so slightly different. We weren't.
I don't know how
we
you were going to get that
pretty
drum up
nerdy,
there.
but we weren't standing around in the hallways with our instruments and talk about band kind of nerdy. Like, but
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
one step above those band nerds.
And when you saw it at the time, were you also part of the sort of American Pie fandom that was quite ubiquitous?
I don't think so. Like,
no.
I remember thinking Chris Klein was cute,
Yeah.
and he was the only one I
Well,
think that I thought was cute.
you know who I
Sean
thought
William
was
Scott
cute?
was a little bit.
No, I thought Finch was cute.
Oh, Finch is
I
kinda
thought
cute.
Finch was
You
cute.
heard all the
kinda
rumors.
cute.
So,
Yeah,
You know, I did. I heard the rumors, and I was like, because I was thinking about it. I'm like, which one of these guys? Because they're all dressed like different members of a ska band.
Yeah.
I'm like, which one of these guys in this group would I be like most likely? And it would be Finch.
Okay.
It would be
I can see
Finch
that.
or Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica for sure.
Either.
I think Finch is objectively the coolest. I mean,
Absolutely.
like, especially now, but I think even then, for a certain kind of person, like, he's the one who you would most actually like to hang out with. And
Right.
think is actually pretty badass.
He was the youngest of the cast, I think.
Oh, was he?
Or the
Was he?
youngest male, the youngest of the boys, I think. And he was an actual teenager at the time. He was 17. That's why you don't actually see him and Stifler's mom.
Mhm.
like, getting it on,
You don't
because-
because not even for a second do you see anything.
It's just very
Her holding his hand and that's it.
right.
he
it's
played
alluded
18.
to. Yeah, he
Right.
played
Right.
18, but he
Isn't
was
that
17
ironic?
at the.
And she even
Isn't
did
it
the
ironic?
whole-
Don't you think?
I do. She even made the comment about the 18
Right,
age
just
scotch,
like
and
I
that's
like
how I
'em.
like it, and he was the only one who wasn't at least 18.
Yeah, the rest of them were in their 20s.
Most of them were playing roughly their age, early 20s. I think
Mhm.
Jason Biggs was 20 when they shot it. I think Alyson Hannigan was like 25 or 6.
Yeah, I think
know
there was
Terry
a
was a little
couple.
bit older. The oldest of them was Shannon Elizabeth, who was like 28.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
She
Jesus.
looks like a grown ass adult.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
she
she
does.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
And like
does.
she better be because of that whole scene.
Oh,
which
yeah.
we'll talk about later on.
Mhm.
Exactly.
That too. Have notes about that as well.
Joey, you saw it for the first time 5 years ago at the age of 30.
Yeah, because last week, or last episode, when we were talking about 10 Things I Hate About You, I was saying that how High School Slumber Party has not covered that yet. But in their first 5 or 10 episodes, Brian covered this with a couple of his friends, and I was like, this is a movie that I've never seen before. They're talking about it in the podcast. I might as well watch it. And I watched it in 2018, and I was just like, all right, it's exactly kind of what I thought it was going to be. Like I said,
Right.
this is not my kind of comedy. I like actors in here. I think there are some good performances. I think that there's a hand. I I appreciated Mina Suvari more in this now after seeing her like deal with the bullshit that she had to deal with in American Beauty. Like I was like, oh, you don't have to get like predatory like preyed upon in this movie. Like there's a come up for you a little bit here, which is nice. But like overall, this is just not ever a movie that I'm gonna like choose to see, and I've not seen any of the sequels and like. So
I think I saw the second one.
I don't know if I even saw the second one.
I think I did, because I think I have a note about that. I think they get married at some point.
There is an American Wedding.
American Wedding is the third one.
Oh, okay. So I did see that.
Wedding
I saw
is good.
I saw 3 then.
I was gonna say, like, are any of the sequels? Because I know that Brian and Alyson Hannigan of The Contenders, and also they did one, like one of the more recent one, like Girls Rules, which might have been like a straight to Netflix one that came out a couple years ago.
That was one of the
several
spin-offs.
straight to streaming. There's several
keep
of those.
doing that. Like, are any of them like considered good? Like I
They're
don't know
just
if this
as
is
good as
but,
this
like,
one.
okay. That's a better way of saying it.
Joe, I was explaining to you off mic. There's 3 direct sequels with the actual cast. So there's 2, which is meh. Wedding, which is pretty sweet. I like that a lot, actually. And then Reunion, which came out, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
A while later. Yeah.
And so those are the only 3 direct sequels. And there's a whole bunch of like side projects with like Stifler's relatives. And it's about there's
a long list. And you know what? Eugene Levy is in a lot of them.
Really?
He is in a lot of them. He's the only person who's in any of them, basically.
Yeah, he's done the most of the sequels out of anybody in this cast or in any of the
and they're also sort of like they're all sort of cash in, gross out comedies.
Oh, of course.
That's
Yeah,
they
that's
don't have
all
the
it
heart that American Pie has. But I also saw it on video the summer, like the fall after it came out. I didn't see it in the theater. And everybody had been talking about it all summer and been quoting it all summer, and like I liked it. I did. I still kind of do like it. I like a lot of things about it. There's a lot of stuff I definitely don't like about it anymore. But I think it was kind of surprising at the time. Like, I think it was a much more heartfelt movie than anybody was expecting. And I kind of feel that a lot of the popularity of it, or like the success of it, had to do with the fact that it was this sort of, it's paying homage to like a lot of kind of teen sex comedies from the 80s.
Right.
But was doing it in this way that was like really sort of authentic and genuine, and had this like underlying kind of positive spirit to it that I think is still there. Though again, a lot of it is not aged well, and it's also just a very sort of awkward movie. Like it's
a little bit.
It's so weirdly paced, and it's like a lot of it doesn't make sense anymore. I don't know. It had a kind of like really, I don't know, unpretentious vibe to it that I think was surprising to a lot of people. That I think as well. And the characters are good. Like they're much more interesting than most characters in that kind of movie.
I just feel like, having not seen it until recently, like I think that we were talking about when we did 10 Things I Hate About You, and like watching it then versus watching it now, like I have no nostalgia for it, and so I don't have any like affection, or like, oh, this is just the way it was. Like there are so many better high school movies now that like give women, like female characters, agency and like have actual like developed storylines for people, and like it's just hard to watch this new, like I don't know, like if you've never seen this, I don't think it's worth seeing now. But I think
get your point for that, for sure.
Honest, it's a good time capsule of 1999.
A little bit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It is a little bit.
Yeah, it was awkward, and things were not great for girls, and somebody probably would have put you topless streaming.
Absolutely.
On their, little email server or whatever.
And Blink 182 was in your
class.
And
Blink 182, exactly.
And they will miscredit Travis Barker as the former drummer.
I was at the opening of Travis Barker's store with
Stars and Straps. Or
Stars and Straps, you're right.
Stars and Straps.
I mean, that was in, I think, 1999. I remember meeting Travis Barker then. And so, this is the music. So it probably makes us uncomfortable, and we don't really like it because it's a reminder of
how cringe 1999 was.
Yeah, it was pretty cringe.
I was 17. I was only
19.
17.
I was out of high school. I was one of the college kids. No, I wasn't. In the high school party.
Well, you were the college girl that Oz goes on the date with.
Yes, that was like, oh, don't do that.
I was almost 20 when it came out a month before I turned 20.
Yeah.
So I was also 19.
Yeah, no, I was 17, and it was funny to me
Yeah, I remember thinking it was funny at the time, but I hadn't rewatched it in 20 years.
That's what I was going to say. It had
and it
been
didn't
20
make
years
me
since
like
I'd
cringe,
seen it.
like, oh my God, I can't watch this, but it also didn't make me laugh.
Yeah, I did not laugh as much as I remembered laughing at, you know.
Like maybe
I laughed.
Yeah, like,
I laughed in some very different places than I would have 20 years ago.
Yes.
I'll talk more about that later on. Yeah, I think it's important though for people to like. One of the things that we kind of have to explain, I think, when we're talking about this now, is that it was huge. It was a hugely successful movie. I mean, it made $100 million in 23 years ago.
Everybody knew about it. Everybody
did, and it's not like that. Can't just be explained as it having been a sort of like, I don't know, by the books sort of teen gross out movie. Like there was more to it than that. It spoke to people in some really deeper level that is really hard to see and understand now. But I think if, again, one of the things we were talking about with 10 Things is that it sort of challenged a lot of the typical tropes and sort of pushed forward like what some of the things you can do in a teen movie are. And I think this took a lot of that sort of kind of mean-spirited slapstick sort of gross out comedy of the 80s and put sort of a modern authenticity and heart into it that sometimes is successful and sometimes isn't. But I think that's why it was such a success beyond just it being this sort of, lowest common denominator sort of a comedy.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't as like, I don't know, like as gritty as those 80s raunchy comedies were.
As much as like a shock, like the beginning of that shock era with animation also, and with teen comedies, and things like that, where it was like, how far can we push the envelope? And that in and of itself was supposed to be the funny part or the punchline, but it's like, well, it's not funny,
right?
Like, you showed him fucking a pie, like that was disturbing.
Well, okay. Did you watch the theatrical release, or did you watch the? Because I watched the uncut version.
Peacock.
I watched the uncut version as well,
where he's like on the fight, like take it upstairs, Jim.
No, it was just him.
Yeah, that was the theatrical release. Like I watched
the one.
That's the
thing. I literally said that. I'm like, go to your fucking room.
Yeah, like, take it upstairs.
Well, to be fair, his parents don't have a real good grasp of like what a closed door actually signifies. Like his mom walks in at the beginning and his dad walks in later. Like, going to his room does not exactly,
it would have been a better choice than doing it on the
that he had a mom in this movie. I completely forgot the mom existed.
Yeah, she was like a very minor out.
Once
whatever.
She found out her son's fucking pies and watching the porn through the squiggles, she was like,
right. She gave him a kiss while he's jerking off.
Once she realized that, she's like, you know what? Take a step away.
And bless Dad.
I'm gonna let Mr. Eugene Levy.
Bless Dad. He's trying so hard to connect to his son, and he's trying to be sex positive, and he's trying to do it, but it's just
which is kind of a charming.
Yeah, that part was sweet. I thought Eugene Levy's character was.
I always loved Eugene Levy
so
all the fucking time. Can we talk about? Okay, so I was told today that we would be remiss if we did not mention how Eugene Levy is daddy now.
Yeah, that's
true.
Wait, what?
Like Eugene Levy is becoming daddy.
Like Eugene Levy, they think he's sexy.
Yeah.
Is that because of Schitt's Creek, or is that because of just like these movies?
Yeah,
okay.
Schitt's Creek, and like with the new, like now that he's gray and he's cleaned up that.
And also like because his son is hot, but his son is also gay, and so he's like more accessible than his son is, and like
right.
And then you kind of see how Eugene Levy's kind of hot when you look at his son, and you're like, oh, I'm confused now. Yeah.
See, that's the thing. For me, like, Eugene Levy was not necessarily dad from this movie.
No.
For me, Eugene Levy was like the Eugene Levy from Splash.
And for me, he was the SCTV Eugene Levy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, he was not sexy.
Yeah. No. I don't remember thinking Eugene Levy was sexy.
No.
At all. Well,
no, not now. Well, also, I was not into daddies then.
No.
But then once I watched Poltergeist at the appropriate age,
and
then I became into daddies. Yeah.
Like,
oh, daddy's the wave. Okay.
So Joey, you mentioned that
Sorry.
You mentioned, Joey, that there were some things that you liked in rewatching it. Is there a favorite story? Like there's like several storylines being thrown in the air here, which is I realized that more intensely this time around too, that it's like 4 different movies happening at the same time, which sometimes seem like they're part of the same movie and sometimes don't. Is there a storyline or like an element of the movie beyond Eugene Levy, which we can all objectively say is awesome?
Yeah. I think the Chris Klein one is probably the best one.
Yes.
I think that there's 2 things this movie does. It's just like, hey, straight guys can like theater and women do like sex. It's like, okay, we get it. Like both of those.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious. But
Yeah.
I do think that the sort of stereotypical like, oh my God, the musical or the performance and the big game are both on the same day. Like that.
Of course.
It pays off here.
Of course.
It's a very
must
High School Musical thing.
Yeah.
But I think
Before
he's
it's a
great. I think
musical, though.
he and Mina Suvari are great together. I think that they're the best of the stories. Like all the like the virginity, like the sex pact. Like I don't care about that. Like there's stuff that I just don't care about. But like the Chris Klein is kind of like he's always kind of like a sweet dummy in all of the movies that I've seen him in, and like he just pulls it off here really well. So like I would say like I genuinely objectively like that part of this movie. I'd rather excise that and watch that on its own as opposed to being surrounded by the rest of this. But like, I would say that that's legitimately good. My favorite part of this movie.
I had the same thoughts watching it. Honestly, I was like, I want this to be its own movie because I love these two. I fucking love Chris Klein. Chris Klein is fucking awesome, and I'm so upset that his career kind of petered out.
I was gonna say what because that was one of the ones I was like, what happened to him?
I forgot Chris Klein existed.
Oh shit, yeah.
I don't want to get too far into the weeds on it, but a couple things is that his relationship and breakup with Katie Holmes was like very, very public and very messy.
I remember they dated.
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
He had an alcohol problem, which got worse after that.
I remember that.
He had a couple of DUIs in the early 2010s, and he's had a hard time sort of reestablishing himself in Hollywood because of that.
Right.
He's done a lot of really good, cool work recently. So he's kind of rebounding in a very similar way to Mina Suvari, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, he's a fucking treasure, man. He is he's so fucking funny, and he's such a great performer. I did not find Oz an especially funny character 20 years ago. Every goddamn line he delivers, I am crying. It's so funny.
I did like him more now than I think I used to.
It's so deadpan and earnest, and like it's like adorable, but like also so goofy, and like he does it with this sort of knowing
voice,
wink, and like
he's like the anti-Batman voice. Like it's weird. Like it's like this sensitive whisper. He's like Joey Whispers.
Joey Whispers.
Like he's like, I had a cheesesteak. Like the voice. That's the only thing. That's my only note. Sorry. Everything else, Chris Klein, great.
And his hair, but see, they all had hair problems.
They all had hair problems. Yeah.
Everybody had hair problems in the 90s.
No, everybody's had that hair.
Like it was something about they put some product in it.
Gel?
But like then they didn't do
LA
spiky.
Looks?
They put the product like you put for spiky hair.
Yeah,
But then they flat hair.
Right.
And so it just made like a helmet of hair.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of
to go under his
really
lacrosse
guy,
helmet.
But that hair was not doing it for me.
Yeah,
I was like,
that
was
wasn't.
Just muss it up a little or something. Like,
yeah,
so
like
stiff.
dry it out, wash it.
But yeah, and then Jason Biggs doing his hair in the mirror, and it's just
the Jason Biggs hair in this movie is like fucking bearable.
It is 1999, and that's just what people look like.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the baggy cargo pants and like whatever the fuck Shermanator is wearing in that first. Oh my god,
everybody is dressed like different members of a ska band.
Yes,
that's what's going on.
Yep, all the boys are anyway.
Even the girls.
You think the girls too?
Even the girls, the sweaters and the
sweaters.
Yeah, in some ways, especially the background girls look like they're the lead singer of Save Ferris or whatever.
Yeah, they're all dressed like Gwen Stefani.
Yeah, I also forgot that him and Suvari's chemistry is so good. Like, and they like again, that's part of what makes it work so well. But they really have this like electric chemistry between them.
They were super.
Yeah, they're cute.
And I also loved that they. One of the things that I like again about sort of the authenticity of this movie is that they're actually it's like them singing in that in the scene, and neither of them are that good. They're not great singers,
you could tell,
but they're okay and they're having a good time. And it's like it's really fun to watch these two like actually sing this thing. And,
yeah, it's cute.
I really appreciate that.
It's cute. It's high school. Like it looks age appropriate. Like we don't expect them to come out here like Beyonce.
Right.
You know?
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
even though
like-
they're like competing, but
Right. Well, they could have put a little more sass on it and they could have done better with the outfits. But hey, who am I? I was only in show choir, whatever.
And for some reason, like a line that I found really funny this time that I never even noticed before is when the other dude in the choir, when he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to do the solo," and he's like,
Yeah.
"You suck."
Yeah, he sucked.
Yeah.
He was doing all the things. Like, I remember all of those things, the warm-ups or whatever. Like, oh, like everybody
Maybe
knew
my
a guy
yeah.
like that. Everybody knew a guy like that.
He was super
Yeah.
into it.
Definitely not me.
Doing
I wasn't
choir
that
and theater.
guy.
Oh, you weren't that
No.
guy? Oh,
No,
I would never
God,
believe
no.
it. I would never
Oof.
believe it while you're over there
I-
doing your zigamamas right now.
How about you guys? Is there a scene or a aside from Chris Klein and Mina Savari, who we all seem to really love in this? Is there a plot line or a scene or a character thread that you guys really liked this time around?
I kind of would have liked to see Finch and Jessica hook up, which in my
I
head,
know.
In my head, they do.
In my head,
I
they
hate
do.
when she's like, "I'm not into you." I'm like, "No, be into
No,
him.
no.
You guys
Yeah.
are." Oh,
See, in
I
my
think
head,
that-
she knows he's a virgin, okay? She's
Mhm.
in on this whole, she knows
Yeah,
what the fuck is
she
going
knows.
on. She doesn't want him as a virgin. She's not a virgin. Trust me, you don't want to take someone's virginity.
No.
Whatever y'all think about
No,
taking
you
someone's
don't.
virginity, you don't want it.
You don't want it.
Let him lose it.
You don't want it.
Let him get rid of that before they come to you. And that's what she knew, because you could tell she knew her
She
shit.
was
and
like,
she was like, no,
mhm.
you go somewhere else and you come back. So
Right.
to me, in my head, the after
Eventually, they
is
hook up later.
after he sleeps with Stifler's mom and gets a little experience.
Right. I think so too.
Yeah, but I liked their little dynamic.
I liked their
I wanted
dynamic.
to know more about like Finch's home life. Like I wanted to know
A little bit what
what's going on
that
with
looks
him
like, why
and-
he only could shit at home.
Yes, which I guess is not that uncommon, but like,
But why are you like you need to train yourself to shit before you go. Like
Right.
in every single day in the middle of the day, like fix that. You
yeah,
can. It's like you have your mochaccino earlier.
I know. Don't be drinking mochachinos if they make you have to poop by
Right?
freaking midday. So.
Like it's a 16-minute round trip. Like really?
But yeah, and then other than that, I'm trying to think. The Jason Biggs thing didn't really interest me. I mean, I did like
Nah.
Michelle. I liked that Michelle turned out to be
Right.
that she gave
Sneaky freaky.
because that is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The band
Yeah.
kids are freaky,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
like that was a thing where nobody thought that. It was like,
Oh, we knew
band
about
kids
that.
but we knew about the choir, and the choir knew
And
about
then
us
the
'cause we
theater
shared
kids
space.
too.
Yeah,
Like the theater
kids.
and the choir and the band
You all
kids.
shared space.
We all shared space.
and you were
but
there after school.
we didn't really
when
mix.
There was minimal adult
but we knew what you
supervision.
were up to.
Yes. And so I liked that she turned out to be like,
Yeah.
say my name, bitch.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, girl.
Apparently that was
Get
an
it.
ad lib
That's hilarious. I
that
love
she did
Alyson
it and
Hannigan,
like
though.
yeah that
She's-
she did it and they
she's
thought it
amazing.
was funny and
I
they
love
left
that.
it in.
Yeah.
I love it.
So for me, I would say, yeah, that's what I would say.
I will say, like, one of the things that I was thinking about watching it this time around is like both a criticism and also like a compliment, which is that like you're right, I would kind of like to know more about these characters' past lives or like
Mhm.
external lives, but at the same time, one of the things I really kind of admire about this movie is that it starts with these like four dudes who aren't necessarily all from like the same kind of like high school clique, but you do kind of get why they're friends. Like implicitly, they write the characters well enough and they're acted well enough that I do understand like how these four people came to be friends with each other. And then also like the interesting dynamic with Stifler, who's like this guy who isn't their friend but kind of is, and like,
Well,
you
they
kind
say
of
at the
understand
end.
how that works.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
feel like,
like-
they all just grew up together.
Yeah.
I think they all just went to
Yeah.
school together and
Mhm.
have always known each other. And Stifler was always a peripheral figure that they knew was a dick, but they knew he was
They're
rich.
like, but that's how he is.
yeah, and they're like, well, whatever. He's a dick
His
to
mom's
everybody.
hot.
He's not bullying us.
She
He
lets
bullies
us
the
have
world.
parties,
Yeah.
you know.
So
Like
I
we
think
get
they
to
just let
drink
go.
at Stifler's house.
But then
Like you
again,
gotta
though,
have that
They
friend.
didn't know how hot Stifler's mom. Like that was a news to them. Like when they went in the house and saw that picture, they were like, "Oh, that's Stifler's mom."
I thought that they would
I
have
thought they
known
So
because
maybe
he
they
was
hadn't known
talking
him
about.
forever.
Jim is telling Michelle at the end like that Stifler's mom got the house in the divorce or whatever. So like I'm sure they would have known what
I don't know.
his mom looked like.
I have no idea. She
Well, I
seemed
guess
like
there's
she-
also no like internet. There's no like whatever. Maybe you wouldn't.
How do you guys feel like John Cho feels about this movie?
I forgot he was in this movie too, and he's like the guy that does the whole MILF thing.
He's
like,
the MILF guy. That's his literal character name is MILF guy.
yeah,
Is it
That's-
really?
he's credited
yeah.
twice. He's credited as the MILF guy, and he's also credited as one of the guys in the jazz choir.
That's so
Uh-huh.
funny. And now
Yes.
is this where the term MILF originated? Because
No.
it's where it originated for me.
Well, for me,
I-
it popularized it, but I saw it somewhere and I did not
it's
write
not
it down.
from
It's not
this?
from this. It's
Okay.
from something else. But this
Oh, I always thought it was from
popularized it.
this.
No, it just made it
Interesting.
popular.
It's where I
Huh.
first heard it.
Yeah,
That's
it's where
when-
I first heard it.
never
I
had
didn't
heard
hear it
until
somewhere else.
this.
I didn't know it came from something else until I looked it up.
Reddit says that it just grew organically in the 80s and 90s, but then became widely known because of this movie. But it had been around, I guess, for decades before that. But
Okay.
Wow.
So it's
I
just
don't
like something that somebody who made the movie
Right,
knew
heard.
from local vernacular and decided, ooh, let's
To
throw
put
that
it
in about
put it in a
Stifler's
movie.
mom.
Why not?
because I would say that this movie, not to criticize this movie, but like this movie's not creative enough to come up with something like that. It's creative enough.
No,
It's
not
good enough
really.
to like take a thing and put it in the right context for enjoyment, but it's not
and it
like
is.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right about that. There's no. It definitely kind of fits a template of raunchy sex comedies.
See, and I can't remember because I have a really bad memory.
Well-
whether it was the first to do any of these things or it was somewhere.
Well,
in
for
the
me, it
middle
just
or-
feels right. So that's just kind of how I move through the world. Like, yeah, that feels right. This feels like your average raunchy
Right.
sex comedy.
On the Stifler note, I also will say that I don't think I appreciated how funny Sean William Scott is,
He is
until
funny.
recently.
I liked him more
He's
later.
very funny.
Yeah, I
in
liked
Dude,
him
Where's
more
My
later.
Car?
Yes. I
liked
Yeah.
freaking love
yeah.
that movie, and
Yeah,
I don't
it's
give a
funny.
shit. I
It's
love
dumb
that
as
movie.
shit, but it's funny.
I love that movie. But he only got paid $8,000 for this movie.
Oh, really?
Shut up!
Yep, $8,000.
shit.
Stifler?
Yep, to
Of
be
Stifler's
Stifler.
mom fame?
And this is what like everybody knows him as Stifler,
Yeah.
right? Like people like that's where that's his claim to fame. Like he's done other things. He's hilarious. He's great. $8,000.
Wow. He should have
That's
sued.
insane.
He should have sued. Well, I guess this is like his first major
Anything
thing.
he
So
was in.
it was the kind of thing you only get paid $8,000 for.
I guess so.
It's almost unimaginable that someone like a role that is that iconic,
I know.
right? Like you say the word Stifler and people know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
and he gets $8,000 for it.
Yeah,
Yep.
but I mean, it also like literally every job he got after this is because of this movie, right? So like,
Oh, yeah.
it's $8,000
Right.
and the ultimate foot in the door. So
Yeah.
Right.
So it was worth taking a dive on that first paycheck in order to get many, many more.
Joey, do you like Sean William Scott?
I like the movie Evolution. I haven't seen Evolution in forever. We had to watch.
Well, it's been a
Yeah.
while.
Mm-hmm.
We watched Dude, Where's My Car for Too Fast, Too Forever, and I wish those are 90 minutes. I wish I could get back. Like it's just this is not my oeuvre, right? Like this is just not
it's
what
stupid.
Oh, it's real
I.
dumb.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
We
I
like
think
that,
like
though.
the stupid
Yeah.
I grew up with, I have a fondness for, but the stuff that I didn't grow up with that I watched way too late, I'm like, I can't. Like, I understand why people like it. I'm not going to like try to like take it away from anybody, but at
You
the same
couldn't
time,
if you
like,
tried.
Well, have you
I don't wanna
have you
try.
watched the
No, I
have you
know,
watched
I
the
know.
rundown for Too Fast yet?
no, we haven't done a rock lap yet. So we're gonna do when we
Okay.
do the rock lap, we'll probably do that. But
Because that movie is awesome, and he is great in that movie.
I will say, and this is not the, I think it's why it works, but the Jay Baruchel, I think, wrote and directed it. He at least directed it. Goon, where Sean
Yeah.
William Scott plays a hockey
Uh-huh.
player, and he's
Right.
It's a
it's a great
Yeah.
movie.
that movie's great.
The
That
second, the
one's pretty
sequel
funny.
is awful. Like I turned the sequel off. I was like, this is not. But the first Goon is great, and that's my favorite Sean William Scott movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's not somebody I seek out things that he's in.
No, I
but
don't go
usually if
looking
I
for the
watch something
latest.
he's in, I enjoy him fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He's pretty funny.
So Joey, what do you hate about this movie?
Most of it. I mean, it's just the tone. Like I don't like. There's not something I can specifically point my finger to. I think. Stuff like Jim addressed the email wrong feels like, oh, maybe we didn't understand the internet in 1999 and like we didn't understand how email worked, but like now it's hard to kind of believe that.
Yeah. It's pretty
Um,
easy to believe that then, but yeah, okay.
I mean,
I
look
just
at
yeah,
what he
it's
was
just like
working
the
Yeah.
with. The interface
Right.
he was working
Yeah.
with, I could see how he.
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like the
If you
overall.
can set up a fucking webcam, you understand email. Like that's true. In 1999, if you
And he
have
was
a
also
web camera.
real nervous. He
Well,
was in a
that's
hurry
true.
and
He was
real
in a
nervous
well,
to get that set up. before
It's
she came in the
amazing
door.
that they were able to pull this off and no one got arrested for this.
Oh yeah, and like, didn't we all just do this pact where we agreed to everything has to be consensual and above
Right.
board?
Yeah,
Right.
this is
Yeah.
neither
That's not
consensual
consensual.
nor above board. However, though, I will say, who goes to somebody's house and masturbates in their bed?
That's okay. That's on her. That's on her.
Well, she's from a foreign European country.
Oh, well,
where
that
the
might be
things
her
are different.
custom. That might be her custom,
I
but
have not personally ever gone to a new person that I just met's house for tutoring
no.
and decided to
Yeah.
go through all of their belongings and
No.
then masturbate on their bed.
Well,
in
and
my
also,
underwear.
if I was coming to your house to change, it's not in your room.
I'm such
I
a
know.
prude.
I'm such a prude. I usually don't go to people's houses if I'm going to change and like use their room.
Well, and why did she need to
Yeah.
change? I thought she was going to come over in a fucking tutu because she said she
Right.
was going to ballet class. She was
But
going
she
to need
just-
to change. She was in shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Stay in your fucking clothes. What's the problem?
I don't know
Because
what
she was
her-
sweaty. Like he gives a shit.
He doesn't care.
He will fuck you no matter what. You could be
Yeah.
covered in mud. Like, if that is
This-
what you came for.
This whole scene that is very much a crime
Yes, it's very much a
very
crime.
much.
is so long. Holy
Yeah.
shit, it goes on forever.
And
Yeah.
are you kidding me? He ran for
Ran
like
a block,
2
or
blocks.
2 blocks, yeah.
And like just to see her change, and then his plan was to run back. And
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
he
Because you wouldn't think she was gonna do what she did and take all that time. You'd think she's gonna take 5 minutes to change her clothes.
right. That's what you would assume.
And by the time you get there, you ain't gonna see shit. And
No.
she's gonna stay in her bra and panties and just put a new
Right.
set of clothes on.
Yeah.
And they really like okay. So
They got
sure,
beers?
yes, yes,
Where did they get beers?
from their dad's garage fridge, obviously.
Right? You only saw one dad, so who
Right.
knows?
Well, and then like and then they couldn't. Well, when Sherm calls them and says that he addressed it wrong, like you really want to watch your friend.
Right? Like, and you didn't warn it, bro.
You didn't
Like,
call
you,
him?
You fucked this pact already. You were supposed
Right?
to keep it consensual. You were supposed to be looking out for each other.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the
Kevin.
rule right in the beginning with the no prostitutes. Okay, number
Right.
one, now we don't use that word. Number
Well,
two,
no
that's
sex workers.
consensual and above board.
Yes,
There ain't
that is
nothing wrong with
both.
hiring a sex worker to
Right?
lose your virginity.
that
if
is
it's
both
legal to do.
consensual and above board.
That's
Hold
right.
on. That is consent due to a transactional
It may
relationship
be
that we're going to have.
transactional, but it's not
Hey,
non-consensual.
but
That's
everybody
your
knows
job.
what's going on here.
Yes.
She's a professional.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's hard to watch.
It's
That's
kind of there. That is what I hate. Is
Yeah,
when I
that's
go
the-
back
That's the big thing.
and when I have to sit there and remember how hard I laughed, or not how
Yeah.
hard I
Yeah.
laughed, but like thinking about the time when this shit was cool.
And you were just like, oh, dang.
Oh dang!
wow,
Oh dang!
crazy.
Like yeah, it was like a thing, but it was just like oh dag, they went there.
No, but I think that's the issue. That's a better way to say the issue is that like the humor in this movie doesn't come from like organic situations. It comes from like movie generated situations in which
Mhm.
like things that like are funny in a way of like, oh my god, can you believe he did that? But it's like
Right.
it didn't happen. Like that would never happen. And it's just like no one would say, hey, can I come over and change clothes at your house? Like even if English isn't your first, like it's just stuff like that where it's
I
like
know.
you're setting things up like as this dude fantasy, and it's like this is
Right.
if this is funny, it's funny for you. That's cool. But like, it's not. It doesn't feel. No one in this movie is acting like a normal human being. These are like
No.
aliens trying to imitate high school life or
Well,
something.
and that was teen shows,
Well, and I'm
and
sorry,
that
but
was
what are
teen
the chances
movies.
that 4 senior boys that are friends with each other are all still virgins?
Yeah, that too.
I feel like that was unlikely in the 1999. Like,
Mm.
I mean, I
not
don't
all
know.
4 of them.
Like, sure,
well,
there
the
were
one
some.
was getting everything but laid.
That's
Kevin
true.
was getting everything but,
That's right.
and so there's that.
He just hadn't slid into home yet.
And I did love that when Jessica asked her if she'd had an orgasm, and she's like, I think so.
I
because-
made like a big old note. Like we covered this in Fast Times.
Yes,
like
we
we
did.
just
Yeah.
talked
We
about
just
Fast
talked about
Times,
this
and
in
like
Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
we
You would know.
she spit her drink. Because she was like, well, so like, okay, so you lose your virginity, quote unquote, at one point. Like, but when did it actually make your eyes roll back in your
Right.
head? And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And she spit her drink out at me. And I was like, yeah, because no, you would know.
yeah.
That's why she was like, no, that means you have not.
Yeah, but I
And then
remember
she was
there
like-
being an age though where I only thought I had
Wow.
because I lost my virginity when I was in high school, but not a senior. And we were a little young for that, and he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, that's
Well,
just the reality.
Nobody knew what they
I
were
didn't
doing.
know what I was doing. He didn't know what he was doing. We were just
The weirdest
fumbling
thing about
around.
this whole scene for me now is like I forgot about this too, is that like the ending of the movie, like the coda is that actually now Jim and Nadia are like friends or maybe even a couple. They do weird sex internet shit together, and like that's the moral of the story.
And so the thing I guess we're supposed to take from this is she's kinky, and that's
guess.
why she was jerking off in his bed because she was into that shit, and she was kind of hoping he was going to come back in. Because why else would you do that?
It almost implies they're together, and I think it's smart of the sequels to realize like that going the Michelle angle was much better, like in the long run. Like that was a much better storyline to pursue.
I feel like she's also more toned down, like in the subsequent movies. Michelle is.
Oh, okay.
Like she's not quite as.
She's not
twangy.
His ass in bed, or
no, that she's not like as
she's not as like
skitchy.
Okay, the one time in band camp, one time in band camp, like Jesus Christ,
like oh my God, I'm gonna have to ask you to take a breath, ma'am.
But I'm like, the one thing I do always think about with this movie is because I do actually once in a long while start a sentence with this one time in band camp.
Of course.
Literally went to band camp.
I literally every year, because that was what you did, because when you're a marching band to get ready for learning, you had to learn all that shit. Like we did those big things where you had you made shapes and did all that shit and did competitions. And so you started a month before school.
Well, that makes sense.
You started going to school every day like you were going for school times. And you did marching practice and learned your stuff so that by the time school started, you guys already knew your shit. But that's because we won like championships and shit. I was in one of those really lame. I went to one of those really lame schools that cared about.
Oh my God, I almost choked. We won championships.
Our sports team sucked, so they were like, well, fuck it. Fine, maybe the band will do better.
Well, at least have the band to go out there and entertain them.
We got like brand new stuff. We were sponsored. We had, we got our drums from a company whose name was the same as our band. Like, they gave us all their shit for free. And,
so at least when they were losing, they had good music accompaniment.
Right,
that's right. Yeah, and we did band marathon where you stayed in the gym for 36 hours.
Oh, the shenanigans! Yep.
And that's where the sex education happened. It's when you stay 36 hours on the weekend. Oh yeah, and on buses to competitions. That's another one.
That's another
bus rides.
Moon times.
Because they'd be like one adult in the front, and then 24.
And they don't want it because they're kind of young too, so they're like,
the drumline instructors were 19 and 21. They didn't give a fuck.
I also have to ask you guys this: did anybody else not remember that Casey Affleck is?
Yes,
I didn't either.
Yes, I was like, holy shit, Casey Affleck!
He's asking Casey Affleck how to make a woman.
Yes,
he knows.
He doesn't know.
Wait, I think I missed it. Where was he? I did not see him this time.
He's Kevin's brother.
He's Kevin's brother with the sex book. He tells him how to like find the sex book.
When he tells him it's in the library, and he was like, well, first he was like, oh, so you just want to get her in bed? Like he fucking cares,
right?
Doesn't he have?
He's got some problems.
Yeah, he's got some issues, but like around that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow. Allegations.
Allegedly.
He's also in the sequel. I completely forgot that he had anything to do with this franchise.
Yeah, I didn't remember.
No, I did not. I forgot that he was.
I knew who he was when I saw this movie.
Yeah, not as much. Not as much.
Because I liked him in Drowning Mona.
Oh, I don't know when that came out.
I feel like that was close-ish. Maybe.
I mean, Good Will Hunting was a couple years earlier, and he was a minor role in that. But I don't think that he'd be instantly recognizable to a lot of people. Obviously, I missed him the first time around. So
like I think he was in a couple of those like '90s movies. Oh, that movie Soul Survivor. You ever see that one? That one's bad.
It doesn't help his visibility here, but in 2 years he'll be in Ocean's 11. So like he's about to become like a much more householdy name or face at least, right?
Okay.
But like,
all right, from that. So for sure. But I don't think I knew
before. I don't think so. Yeah.
No, I don't think I knew about him then. But I forgot that he was in this movie. But I don't think I would have recognized it at the time.
Chris Weitz, who is one of the co-directors, along with Paul Weitz, his brother, also played the voice of the male porn actor in the Scramble porn movie in the beginning, which I think is weirdly unnecessary, but it's interesting.
Part of the 1999
That's the experience,
time capsule, though. Like the experience of being a kid in the 90s was that you got that channel.
There was that weird channel in between. And you could sometimes catch a nipple. You could hear it.
And you would
sometimes you'd see a butt crack or at least
Joey has no idea about this stuff.
No. It sort of existed when I was around. I was entirely too young to be watching it, but like it was
Well, weren't
you've
we
heard
all?
tell.
No. I
And-
mean, we had channels like that. I don't know, but yeah, it was not like a thing that I did with. It was like I was like 12. It was just like I don't know what this is. Like I just know that I'm not supposed to be watching it. So like there was the
Better not
allure
have
of that,
been.
but I didn't. You know, I was too young to actually use it. I don't know what the verb is. No verb is right there.
But yeah, without the internet, unless you found magazines somewhere, or
Right.
had like a cool older sibling who decided to bequeath you their, which I did not. I was an only child.
No, yeah.
And so you got your porn from where you could get it, which was either the Hustler in your parents' drawer, which is super creepy. You didn't want to touch that.
No.
Or you looked it through the scrambled lines on the
Right.
Science Channel
So,
because
you know.
that was what there was.
Boy, was I surprised when I saw what it looked like for
You're
real.
like, it's not green and wavy? What?
Boy, was I shocked.
That's not what I saw.
That's not what I thought it looked like.
No.
I will say another thing that I appreciated this time around was that I'd also kind of forgotten that, and again, it's part of sort of when this movie signals that it's not just trying to be crass and kind of like lowest common denominator is when they call Kevin out for being like kind of a dick,
Yeah.
right? And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah, like I like this scene, and I feel like this is the movie sort of saying like, you know, we're not just all about sort of throwing back to like Porky's style humor or like Revenge of the Nerds or whatever.
Right.
You know, there's something else going on here, and it becomes like self-aware that Kevin is kind of a dick, and his idea is terrible, and they all realize that, and then he kind of does too. And I think that is one of the things that still kind of redeems this movie, and like
They learned
makes it
Right.
Yeah.
it makes it sort of watchable again, even though like one of the centerpieces of it is like a very clear like crime of sexual assault, right? That like I still can't get over that.
But
I
I
know.
know. Make it okay because she's
Right.
smiling at the
But
end.
they're
talking to them on the
laughing.
internet.
She
But I
doesn't
also kind of
mind.
like I kind of get what they were trying to do in that they're trying to kind of evoke that like trope of like putting a hole in the girls'
Yes.
locker room,
Yes.
right? And like looking through it, but like doing it in, like a cool internet age way
Right,
where it's
right.
funny
It's
because
modern.
it's the internet and you're like,
It's
yeah.
modern assault.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's but like now that it happens all the time with like Russians, you know, it's sort of it's a lot more kind of terrifying, and it doesn't have the sort of like I don't know, sort of almost, it was almost kind of far-fetched at the time that it was that you know, that's sort of how you kind of accept it then, but yeah, boy, it does not age well.
Yeah, that was
whatsoever.
definitely the hardest part to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
knew
it's
it was
long.
coming. Yeah,
So
and
long.
it's a
When
very
I forgot, I
major.
remembered you saw her titties, but I forgot about the whole her actually masturbating and all that stuff. I was like, oh shit, that's right. It keeps
They
going
had
and she
to,
strips, and I'm like, oh wow.
They had to cut out certain parts, like of her putting her hand directly down her pants. Like they had to cut
Ah.
that, and some of Vicky's moaning and a little bit of that, and because they were going to get an NC-17 rating.
And I gotta say, with all the masturbating Jim had been doing of late,
yeah, you would
came
think
from touching, not even her touching him, but him touching her thigh.
right.
I ain't never. I've
I
had guys go fast, but
not like that.
touching my
Not
thigh
before
fast. So I was like,
it was even in the
whoa.
vicinity.
Whoa, now, and I think that was just like the really exaggerated. Like
You
we
should
don't
have
want to
tried
get all the
edging.
way in, right? I'm like he didn't even have to be touched.
No.
Like just like touch
Right.
the leg.
Just the idea. Well, he had been running. There was a lot
That's
of
true. It was all worked up.
yeah.
already.
He was already worked
The
up.
endorphins going through him. But yeah, I would have been tired. I would have been like, no, I'm not.
Right.
And now he's all sweaty. Ew.
That's ooh.
Hey, but she was sweaty too. She just came from ballet.
Well,
Maybe
that's what
they were
she
mixing
said.
up the pheromones in there.
Oh.
So one of the reasons that we put this on our list of the first, now it's the second 9 actually, so the first 18, is that this was the 20th highest grossing movie of the year. It made a lot of money. It made $100 million plus on an $18 million budget.
Makes sense.
It spawned a whole bunch of catchphrases. We've already talked about how it, I guess, popularized MILF, if not invented MILF. But I also feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, in my memory, it was also a movie that was like repeatedly copied. Like it created a kind of a new template that a bunch of movies tried to then sort of capitalize on, and the American Pie inspired teen movie was like a thing for a long time. I think going all the way up to a far superior similar movie, Superbad.
Yeah.
I feel like Superbad doesn't really exist without American Pie. Maybe I'm wrong, but
That's probably true, but Superbad's funny though.
Yeah, it's very
Superbad's
funny. It's
funny.
much better. It's much better. But like, I feel like a lot of what it does, it's building off of what American Pie kind of established as
And
like,
learn from American Pie's mistakes.
Right?
yeah.
Well, I think that's
American
actually going
Pie
to be
walked so Superbad could run.
There you go.
that's probably going to be true of a lot of the movies that we watch. I think maybe like the deeper we get into this podcast, I think that these are the movies that like are big and monumental because they like mattered, but they also were big enough that people are going to copy off them. Like nobody's trying to copy Eyes Wide Shut. Like you just don't do that. But like 10 Things I Hate About You in this movie and other ones we're covering this go through this round. Like it's like, you know, there's the, nobody copies the biggest of the biggest, but like there's things like this that are influential that like hold up because there was something special about them that people loved enjoying, and people were like, oh, that movie made $100 million. That doesn't look that hard. We can do it too. And like it's like it's not that easy to like make something that like is actually, you know, watchable. Like I don't think that this is like, I don't like this, but I think it's very good for what it tries to do. Like I appreciate it. I just don't enjoy it.
It's better than most for sure.
Yeah.
And like, I think like Road Trip came out like the year after, and it's very clearly just trying to capitalize on American Pie money. Yeah, tons.
Well,
like,
didn't they make that not another teen movie?
Yeah,
that was like the spoof,
which was like a parody of all of those movies. Yeah,
like it was Scary Movie and not another teen movie, and like it kind of made jokes about that.
Scary Movie was like Scream meets American Pie, kind of.
Yeah. That one was funny. I liked that.
I did like Scary
Movie. It was stupid.
It was another real dumb one that I liked.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that's just...
The first Scary Movie was good in that it was clever in that it was first. And then there was like Scary Movie 8, and you're like, okay.
Well,
and then
I saw the first two.
And like Epic Movie and like all this bullshit.
Oh, I
like,
never saw that.
This is not funny anymore.
No, it's you guys need to stop
making comedies that are comedy parodies of other comedies.
Right. Like
works
I heard you like some comedy. I said put some comedy on your comedy.
Some of these have just got to be either money laundering or like tax fraud.
Oh yeah. Ooh. Intrigue.
Like, you know what? Fuck, we need to get rid of some money.
Just need
like,
to
let's get something like American Pie. I don't care. Shitty,
I don't
shitty.
care.
All the worst actors. Cheap.
Tori Spelling in here now.
Get it.
Or like you lose the characters if you don't make a movie within a certain number. Like with the whole thing with Spider-Man and Sony, like they have to make a movie every 5 years or whatever, or they lose the rights, or maybe
or they
lose
disappear.
They lose Stifler rights if they don't make a movie every 2 years.
He disintegrates if they don't make one.
Who knows? Yeah, all right. So I know, Joey, again, I understand your feelings about this. I know the three of us have much more sort of weirdly nostalgic feelings about this, but like, I don't know, aside from the obvious scene that we've talked about, and some of the other problematic stuff, of which I gotta say, like, there's not a ton. Like, there's not...
It wasn't as much
aside from that,
yeah,
there's not as much as I expect from movies. Like, even 10 Things had some stuff where we're like, ooh, that's not good now. This doesn't, aside from that scene, like, surprisingly little that I'm like, you know.
What's his name? Oz not kind of sticking up for his girlfriend when Stifler is kind of being a dick, and then like
kind of learning experience.
Well, that's true, but like, and that's true. But what the conversation that they're having earlier, he's like, "Oh, I just joined this choir to get like."
Oh, because I mean, and he admitted that initially,
and then once he told her later, then it's like, "Oh, okay, and that kind of made it cool."
Yeah. So I think he was growing up. He was mature.
Yeah, I mean, those are the mistakes you make. We can't expect you to be perfect if you're a teenager,
and being on the lacrosse team with being
and
like,
branching out.
Guy and
yeah,
where do I meet in the middle? Like, he didn't like punch him in the face, but he also wasn't laughing. He was like, oh, come on.
Yeah,
that's true. Like, oh, yeah.
I would just say, like, there was never a time where I found this movie hysterical. Like, I wasn't like laughing out loud watching it the first time. I've always found it a movie that's more sort of like endearing and warm than it is like really, really funny, with some like very funny moments. It's hard. It's really hard to watch now. Like, for sure, it's very hard to watch now. But like, I liked some things more than I thought I ever would, and there's still just some really charming elements of this movie that still really kind of make me smile. Like, I like the way it ends. I like the whole, like, you know, to what's next, and sort of this idea of them, you know, kind of. I like that also it acknowledges that like teenagers are fucking gross and weird shit, and like
that's true.
Yeah, because there's that too.
That's true.
Teenagers are pretty fucked up.
And I mean,
got two of
like,
them
how
myself.
hard did Shermanator blow it?
Oh,
Yeah.
right? He could have
Yeah.
so just had a fucking beautiful girlfriend.
Right?
I know.
Why did
I know.
She was, like,
everybody think he
into
got
him.
laid? She really
Yeah.
liked him.
All he need
Yeah.
do was not
Well,
lie.
but this is a great lesson in toxic
That's also true.
masculinity, is that why do you guys, what is the big deal about getting laid? Which is what they did finally come to terms with. That, like, if boys didn't feel that need to, like, that's what makes you a
Mhm.
man, is getting laid,
Yeah.
which you shouldn't,
Yeah.
then they wouldn't do dumbass shit to get laid.
That's also true.
And then do
But
it
then
with
they all
you know,
do anyway, which
They
is
do,
like kind
yeah.
of a bummer.
Well, like
also.
what also annoys me about this, and again, it's not this, but it's exactly this at the same time, is that like the entire movie, Alyson Hannigan is spending the entire like just being the most awkward, like cringy, like, oh my god, this
Right.
girl is such a dork, and then she's like, so we're gonna screw her? What? It's like you have no basis for like, yeah, everybody has sex, but it's like there's nothing to indicate that your character was even knew what sex was.
Well, and that kind of makes her a little predatory, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like she was like, "No,
She
I knew you were a
pretended to not-
I knew
yeah.
you were a sure thing. That's
Yeah,
why I
she
accepted."
Well,
pretended
Nicole
to
knew
not
because
know.
she went to band
Well,
camp.
she knew,
so-
like, and I mean, and I knew because I was band adjacent. But like,
Yeah, but you're right. Yeah,
And I feel like what's weird is that then like Jason Biggs like does the kind of questionable thing of like, oh, I was used. I like that.
Like,
that makes me so happy.
ooh.
Like I was an object. It's
Yeah.
like so it, like
Yeah.
it almost it empowers any gender really to be like, oh, like sometimes people like being objectified. It's like that shouldn't be the lesson that you take away from
no,
here.
it really shouldn't.
well,
When
but
you,
here's the thing: everybody is fucking weird, and
Right?
everybody likes different things.
I mean, maybe you do.
And
I don't
there
know.
isn't anything you can
Yep.
presume about anybody until you have a conversation with them. The problem is not having the conversation before you make presumptions.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if they had had a conversation before, I mean, and I guess they did. It's not like she fucked him and then said, "I knew you were a sure thing." I mean, she did let him know, and he could have
That's
said at that
true.
point, "Whoa,
He
whoa,
probably could have
I'm not
left.
gonna fuck you," and then she'd have been like, "Bye,"
Right.
and that's his prerogative to do. But he was down, so they went and did it. I mean,
Right.
she didn't attack.
I mean,
him.
I guess we don't know what would have happened if he had said no.
True.
And then they end up getting
Right.
married, which I don't
Do
know
they?
if that's
That's-
yeah,
yeah,
that's
I
what I'm
didn't-
Hey,
saying.
spoilers.
Hey, I mean, if it's
know.
more than a decade, I think we're pretty safe.
I also, again, like if I want to give this movie more credit than maybe it deserves, I also think that I don't think it handles it in a great way, but one of the things that you guys have just been kind of talking about is that it also sort of points out that, like, you know, people have sex and like that's okay and normal, and sometimes it can be really meaningful, and sometimes it can just be like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you get it out of the way for the first time, and like sometimes it kind of sucks and hurts and like isn't very fun and like is awkward, and then sometimes it's great, and that it at least kind of tries to
No,
make
yeah,
that point, and I
definitely.
think that's sort of admirable.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't quite, I don't know, do it in a
Because I
way
think
that
it is different. Everybody's
yeah.
first time
Yeah.
is different.
I like showing the
Mhm.
different perspectives on how it worked out for everybody or didn't work out for some people or, you
Yeah.
know, whatever. Even if some
Some people
pretty
are into
far-fetched.
romance. Some people just want to bang.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's
Some people
just
like MILFs.
Yeah, there's a little something for everybody in there,
Little
except
something
for
for
the
everybody.
Apparently 100+ people like
That's
MILFs,
also true.
specifically
Yeah.
Jennifer
That's
Coolidge.
also true.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I
We
think
now know
she
from
is
history.
queen of.
Yes.
Yeah. I think you can go ahead and
Yeah.
write that down. I think she's
She's the queen.
she
She
the
fucking
queen.
rules. I also do want to say that the scene, or the one moment that made me like I really did laugh out loud this time around, was getting back to Sean William Scott, is during that painful, terrible crime scene. It's when his brother's over his shoulder and he just
Oh
at one
my
point just
God.
like shoves him across the room,
Yeah.
like
Yes.
just like
Yeah.
like knocks him over.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, the timing of it and the look on his face as it happens is just kind of perfect. And then later when he's like, "Hey fuckers, you gonna
Oh
fuck
my
you
God.
fuckers?"
But
I
like,
still-
why were they just laughing like, "Oh, you
It's still
come
very
on,
funny.
you scamp, get out of
I
here."
loved that he got his comeuppance though when he walked in on Finch and
Yes,
his mom.
I was
Oh, yeah,
very
of
glad that
course,
he got
of
to
course.
see with his own squinty eyes.
Yep.
I mean,
that-
that's a trope that you have to include that, or else, you know, the
Well,
movie
yeah.
doesn't. Yeah, the movie
Yeah,
doesn't
you had to
work.
put that in there. But yeah, that he actually got to see.
And
That
why
that
did
was-
like every comedy of the 90s have to have a diarrhea scene?
Yeah. Everybody had
Everybody had to
diarrhea.
have some crazy. They got.
I think we're thinking of Dumb and Dumber and this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
specifically.
well,
I feel like there were more than that. I
feel like everybody
maybe it
had
was
to
just that
poop a
those
lot.
two were such a
Maybe.
major scenes that you were like, oh
Maybe
my
there
God.
was less
I mean,
poop than I
maybe.
thought.
Poop has been used for humor for literally
Well,
thousands of years.
That's true.
That's why they
true.
call it bathroom humor.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's pretty damn funny. Like I don't tend to think like toilet humor is that funny, but like
I mean, I'm not above
also
it.
yeah, but also like the way that Eddie K. Thomas plays that scene is like it's very funny. He is invested and all in and sells it very well. Of all the sort of cringe scenes, like I do think that one they put the most work into.
And I was thankful they didn't make him poop in his pants. I was like,
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, wait, like there's no ass gaskets. No. And then like trying to put the little squares down, like I would have just
explode. There's no way.
Yeah, like I would have put my feet up on the thing and just
something else happen here, I'm not doing
I'll
that.
figure it out.
So Joey, I know you're not going to show this to future generations. I don't know, but what do you guys think? Is this something that has enough staying power that like if your kids do want to watch it at some point, you'll be like, yeah, this is a good way to learn about.
I think if they found it,
my kids would not have any.
Yeah, like I don't know if he would or wouldn't or whatever, but like if you, because like I like old movies. Like by the
My
time
kids
he's
like some old movies, but this is not in there.
By the time he's old enough to watch it, it's going to be a real old movie. So it'll be like on Turner Classic Movies.
American Pie.
Yes, I
Turner
bet.
Classic
I
Movies.
bet you money. I will see you there.
As you implied, though, like it is a good time capsule. So if you really want to be like, yo, you want to see what 99 was really like, I think this is, or at least, you know.
Yes,
I hate about
I
you
would
or
show them
something.
Count
There you
Hardly
go.
Wait if we're going to do like Class of 99.
But also, back to Joey's point, this also is an accurate portrayal of the number of times that you would hear 1 week, which is about once every 45 minutes.
Yes.
That year, because you hear it twice in this movie, so at least it nails that one down. This movie, by the way, has a whole bunch of songs in the movie that are not on the soundtrack, which is like the soundtrack is like garbage, and the stuff that's actually in the movie is great. So like the whole song is not in the soundtrack. The Harvey Danger song is not in the soundtrack. 1 Week is not on the soundtrack. And then weirdly, I didn't know this until recently. I was kind of researching it, but the song that is synonymous with this series is "Laid," right? And it's the Matt Nathanson cover of it that is used in American Wedding, but it didn't appear on the soundtrack or in any of the movies until the third one. It's not in either American Pie 1 or 2, but they used it for the trailers for both of those movies. So it's entire, like the whole time watching it again, I'm like, where's Laid? I love that song. Like, I love when that comes on and that pivotal moment in the movie, and like, oh, it doesn't. It's not in this movie at all.
John, this is the Sixth Sense all over again.
Yes, I know. I'm waiting for Bruce Willis to talk to somebody. It is exactly that. But that's so weird, because I really thought it was like, it's one of those like Mandela effect things where like I thought I could have sworn that this is a major part of the background noise of this movie, but it is absolutely not until the third one. But anyway, I that was a shock to me. So anyway, I guess don't watch this movie if you haven't already.
Yeah, if it's not something you grew up with, it wouldn't be something that I'd be like, oh, you have to see American Pie.
It wouldn't be my
see
first
this dummy
choice.
Fuck a pie. I mean, come on.
Right. I mean, like, I'm sure you've heard. Yeah, no, like this wouldn't be like my go-to, like in suggesting a time capsule or even like an old movie.
We thought Tara Reid could get into college.
Tara Reid, she was in college twice. She was in Urban Legend. Oh, she was in college 3 times.
Yeah.
Thrice.
She was going to the college that I went to, so she was going to Ithaca, which is where I went to college.
Nice.
So, there you go.
Wow.
But in reality, she was going off to like be engaged to Carson Daly for a while. But
That's right.
That's
I
right.
forgot about
Oh my
that.
god. I'm so glad that she got caught up in the Sharknado and everything was cool. That things seem like they're going good. She
Yeah.
was so cute in this, and it was
she
like,
really
oh,
was. She's really good in this too. Like she's very funny, and like this made me sad again for her that her
I
career
know.
sort of that she turned into a train wreck and had so many problems. But like
Well,
she really had a lot of potential. I tend to, when I think about this movie sort of in retrospect, I don't remember her as being much more than sort of like the cute blonde girl who Kevin's trying to sleep with, but like she's very good. She's very funny and she's very charismatic in this movie, and it really is a shame. Sort of what happened to a lot of these
what
actors,
happened?
honestly.
Yeah.
Like it just didn't
Yeah.
go well for a ton of them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Some of them made it.
Thomas Ian Nicholas like had a career beforehand. He
Right,
was a big
as a
child
younger
star,
kid.
Mhm.
What
and
was
he
it?
sort of had a nice
the
career. He
arm?
like Rookie of the Year,
Yeah,
and,
that was the one.
Yeah.
and a Kid in King Arthur's Court.
That was the
and,
other one.
Yeah, and a couple other things, but
Yeah, he was kind of cute.
Isn't
yeah,
he like doing TikTok stuff now or something?
He's not as cute as he used to be.
I feel like I just saw something with him recently doing some silly. I mean, where like he looks good and whatever, he still looks the same.
Oh yeah, like he looks.
He's in good condition. He's held up well.
anyways, this has been fun. We'll end with our final questions. So Joey,
What is both of your favorite movie from 1999?
Oh, wow.
Nikes.
It might, because we've done several from 1999, and I know it's going to be
I
a tie,
know.
because I want to say what we did. Matrix.
you
was
did one
99,
recently,
right?
which we're doing in a few months, but Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Drop Dead
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous. Yeah, that one I
Um,
love. What am I blinking on right now?
I'm
Where'd
like,
it
which
go?
ones? I know there's a bunch that we've
It
done.
went out of my head. Oh, Cruel Intentions. That one I think I liked a lot. There was a bunch. There was a bunch of good
99
movies.
was a good year for movies.
That was
You
a
guys
pretty
picked a
good year. Yeah.
That's why we're doing this.
Hey.
Right?
Oh, wasn't American Beauty also? That was a really good movie.
It's not a
Was that
really good
99?
movie, but yes, it is that year.
Well,
Listen to our episode about American Beauty, and you might change your mind.
That's
you know
another
what?
one
I haven't watched
in
it in a long
forever.
time. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe.
It's not good. It is
And
not good.
especially now in today's light,
Now, I
that
haven't
might
watched
be-
anything with Kevin Spacey in it since all
No.
that happened. Like,
No.
not necessarily as a protest, just because I
No,
have
just
not
because I
done that,
haven't.
But yeah, it's gonna be weird the first.
I would
time.
say,
Yeah.
Joey, like we give a very fair, scathing assessment of American Beauty.
It's
on our
just not a
episode.
good movie. There's issues with
There's
it,
a
and
lot of
also
stuff,
there's
yeah.
it's just
in
not.
those, I don't know. In those times for me, it was all like
Well,
films,
especially
because
we
I
go
was
back
like
to
a,
the 80s.
you know,
We go back to the 80s, so there's a lot of
Right.
stuff when we're rewatching stuff
Yeah.
that we're like, oh damn, this
Yeah.
was not
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
necessarily great. Like, I remember I have a lot of nostalgia for it. And
Right.
I remember growing up with this, but like
right.
rewatching it now, I'm like, what in the hell
Mhm.
is this? But yes, in 99 at like 19, I want to say I was going to the theater, like the most
I
I'd
worked
ever gone
there.
in my life. Yeah, she worked there.
I couldn't get a job at the video store, so I got a job at the movie theater.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Yep.
applied at both the video
So I
store
probably
and the
saw
movie
more
theater.
movies in the theater in 1999 than
Mhm.
probably any other.
Me too.
year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's part of like why, I mean, it's an incredible year for movies, but part of the reason why I think I'm so connected to it is like I definitely saw more movies in movie theaters. And if not, then like the ones that were big, I saw immediately on home video that year.
And I saw
Right.
one movie that year. Like there's
One movie.
What movie was it?
I saw The Phantom Menace. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But I didn't remember that I saw The Phantom Menace in theaters until like after we did the episode about it. And my parents
Yeah.
my family's not even sure. I'm like, did we see that? And they're like, I don't know, maybe.
I don't know.
Probably.
I saw The Matrix in the theater 3
Mhm.
times, and I saw Fight Club in the theater
I
3
saw
times.
that.
So
I-
those
yeah.
are going to probably be a tie.
I-
I
the issue
worked
was
at the
I was-
theater with Phantom Menace.
I
came
was
out.
11, so like it was
Yeah.
a very different world for me. Like I was just playing PlayStation, the first PlayStation, probably. That was probably what I spent a lot of time in 1999 doing. So my idea here is just to be like, hey, this movie sucks.
Yeah. and I
Right,
think-
yeah, like you
yeah.
need
Which
to
is not
temper that.
which is not what I like doing. Like I don't want to say
No, I
that. Like,
know.
I want to be the
Yeah.
optimist, but like I need to be like, hey, some of these movies are pretty bad.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
gotta be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
that's good.
Well, and that's
Mm.
the
But
interesting perspective, though, is because you don't have nostalgia for the movie, is why like it
Yeah.
colors it differently for you.
Yeah, like
But also, like,
hear that.
Yeah.
when
maybe
when
I
you
should
do like a movie like 10 Things, it makes me like, okay, so I'm not wrong to like that movie. Like,
Right.
it is an actually
Right.
good movie because you like it and there's no nostalgia attached to it, which is,
And
why I
that one
think
is good. I do like that one too.
Yeah.
of the movies featuring 1 week, it is the superior of the two. Of the movies that are American blank, though, Joey, that feature Mina Suvari.
Oh, I didn't rank this
Oh.
movie.
Which of
She
the
did
two?
7. I think she did 6 or 7 things that were titled American something.
really?
Mhm.
Well, she's in all the sequels, so that's
Oh,
part
Well,
of
no, I
why.
don't think it's counting that.
Really? It has to be.
She was in American Beauty, American Pie 2, American Reunion.
Okay, maybe it is.
No, it's just those.
No, there was like Hallmark
Okay,
stuff.
Hallmark stuff?
That's
Oh, maybe.
what I'm saying.
Hallmark stuff?
There was whole
I did
shnikes.
not know
Let's
that.
see.
I didn't know what happened to Mina Suvari.
Well, that's what I'm
American.
saying. Like,
She was in American Horror Story. She was in something called
Right,
American Woman.
Yes.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. There was like
Holy
a bunch
shit,
of stuff
dude.
that's like American something.
She's an all
Yeah,
girl.
you're
She's
right.
an all-American
So-
gal.
So it is correct to say. So she was in American Pie, American Beauty, American Pie 2, American Wedding, American Reunion, American Woman, and
American
what was the last one I
American
said? American
Horror
Horror
Story.
Story. So 7. You were pretty close.
I will
There you go.
say I have this as the 9th of 11 movies that we've watched so far, above
Okay.
American Beauty, if only because it's half an hour shorter.
Nice.
Oh,
Well, for whatever
shade.
reason.
Yeah.
and I
mean,
think more critical of toxic masculinity than American Beauty is a little bit.
I don't know.
Maybe.
It's neither of them is doing anything,
they're
intelligent.
really
so.
not. That's not. I don't know. That was a weird. It was a weird time. I was a very young person, and I don't know.
And Joey, lastly, to connect other movies or last week's episode, she was also in Boy Meets World. So there you go.
Oh, Boy Meets
Mina
World.
Suvari.
We watched
Mina
that.
Suvari.
Mina
was?
Suvari, Boy Meets World, where I first learned who Adam Scott was.
As a bully, right? He was a bully in that show.
Like, was he
Adam
not
Scott
really a
was
bully?
Yeah.
He wasn't a bully. He was like, it was weird. He was like the charismatic, like mafioso. I don't know, not like a
because
bully.
I watched it back then before I knew who any of those people were.
Well, also
I didn't
that.
know that.
See,
and
it's
if
a
I watch
Casey
it
Affleck
now, Yeah,
situation.
then you're gonna go,
Yes.
oh shit, that person was in
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you go back.
Because I haven't rewatched Boy Meets World in quite some time.
Oh no.
He
Like,
was
not-
only in the
different
first
people.
either 1 or maybe 2 seasons, but I think
Okay.
just the first season. And yeah, he played, was it Griff was his name? And he was like this he was like this guy who like controlled the hallway basically and like as like a mob boss. And it's very, very weird.
Well, you
when
know
think
that there's
of Adam
now
Scott.
a Boy Meets World rewatch podcast with I
Yeah.
think Will Friedle and Danielle Fishel and
Yes.
somebody else. Not
Ryder
yeah.
Strong.
Phoenix?
yeah, I think Ryder Strong. Yeah,
Phoenix? That's all I think of when I
I
hear
think Ryder
I think
Strong.
it's all the main except for Ben Savage. I think it's like the three
Well,
other main people.
What's
so.
up, Ben Savage? What are you doing?
What's
I
up?
once played darts with Ryder
You
Strong.
good for this?
Did you?
Did you really?
I did.
What an
Yeah.
experience.
One time I was getting a tattoo, and Sherman from this movie
Shermanator?
walked across the front of the tattoo shop. It was 2000 or 2001, so it was still fresh in my mind. And I was laying in the chair getting a tattoo, and I was like, "Motherfucking Shermanator!"
That's pretty
Shermanator!"
awesome though. I think that would be cool because I bet he's really cool in real life. Like
But
I
we
don't
did
know.
go outside and smoke just to see,
Like if he was
is he
still
gonna
hanging
walk on?
around.
Like, is he gonna come on?
I forgot to say last week, Joey, that I also gave a tour to Julia Stiles one time.
Oh,
What kind of tour? Oh, you're a tour guide. Yes. Yeah.
Julia Style.
And I walked by Joseph Gordon-Levitt on the street.
Oh, Joseph Gordon Handsome.
Was he
Yeah.
on a messenger bike from the movie Premium
'Cause they-
Rush?
They both went to Columbia
Is
around
this
the same
episode ever going to end, or are you just going to tell every celebrity story that you have?
You have to answer. Well, you have to ask your second question, and that's on
no.
you. That's
What's
not on
your-
me.
Wait, did you answer the first question?
Yes, I think so.
Favorite
Fight
movie
Club?
from '99?
We said
Yeah,
Fight Club
yeah.
Matrix. I said
Yeah,
time.
Fight Club Matrix.
Guys, that was like 45 minutes ago. That's not my
Yeah.
fault.
It's a
Yeah,
long time
well,
ago.
you know,
What is your-
we forgot.
All-time favorite movie.
Oh, that changes all the time, though.
Then if people like me are like, hey, what's your favorite movie? Like you give an answer to like get them off your back. Do you have one of those in your back
because-
pocket?
I was gonna say because it's
Heather's-
our very first
Mhm.
episode, because we have matching tattoos because of it. Heathers. We're gonna go
Heathers.
Heathers is
Yep.
our all-time
Okay.
favorite movie.
Cool.
That seems pretty straightforward. Like, I don't think that needs to change. You have tattoos of this movie.
I mean, they would not. We have Que Sera Sera tattoos.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't say
So
Heather.
there's nothing from Heathers, but for us, they're Heathers tattoos.
Right.
They're monocles, and they say Que Sera Sera.
So there are
Fair
Heather's
enough.
tattoos.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough.
We
Joey,
know
from
it.
now on, we are going to phrase this question as, when forced to answer the question, what's your favorite
No,
movie?
that's
what do
too
you
wordy. I want to
usually
put that. I want
say?
people. I want
Just
people to feel.
hit him with
the
it.
heat.
Hit him with it. Yeah. No, you got to
on
hit
the
him with
spot.
it because we crumbled.
And then I'm going to ask one more specific question of just you two. If people have not listened to Dude Generation and they where should they start? What's the best episode you would recommend
Oh,
for
that's a
people?
good
Is it from the
question.
beginning, or is it just somewhere like a random one in the middle? You're like, this is our best
Mm-hmm.
one.
We're gonna tell you to go Batman and Beyond. No, we don't
Yeah,
have Batman and
Batman.
Beyond.
No,
But start
not that
at
one.
Batman and After for the most chaos. So like,
Right.
it was good before that, but then we added
mean, it was
research
good before that.
assistants. And so what research assistant means, it sounds real fancy, but what it means is
It's not.
we have
our
friends
friends.
who like to come and get drunk
Right.
while we record a podcast.
They were
and
like,
then
well, what are you guys doing
Yeah.
this weekend? We're
we
like, well, we're
kept putting them off
podcasting.
because
Yeah.
we're podcasting, and we're like, we can't hang out. We can't hang out. We gotta do podcast stuff. So finally, we were like, you know what? Just come over and Google shit for us. And
Yeah.
so they come over while we're doing it, and they stay off mic. That's their choice. They've
Yeah.
chosen not to be on.
We don't
mic.
make them.
We don't force them not to be on mic.
You kept me on the show.
And they literally just Google stuff when we don't know, and just so
Mhm.
that we aren't paying attention and keep the banter up while
Right.
somebody else looks it up for us. But so it makes things more chaotic because they laugh and encourage things, and then that
Right.
makes us be sillier because we have a live studio audience
Right.
who's giving feedback in the room.
A studio audience of one.
Yeah, so if they're if they are laughing, we just
Right.
keep
If
going.
they're laughing,
So, yeah.
we're laughing. Everybody's laughing. So,
Okay.
So Batman, our top rated episode, or not top rated, but like most listened to
Mhm.
episodes are Dracula,
Mhm.
Bram Stoker's
Yes,
Dracula,
I love that one.
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Batman, The Matrix. I think those are and Heathers.
Well,
but
yeah,
'cause
that's
it's
the
our oldest
first one and
episode.
the
So you're like
oldest one,
Winona
yeah.
the podcast.
Kind
yeah,
of.
exactly. We do all Winona
We
and Keanu movies.
are
We've
the
done Point
Winona
Break, Beetlejuice.
generation.
Well, we
I know
did
we did-
have, I don't know if you know, but we had on this network a Winona podcast, Winona Forever, and we also had Keanu Club. So all of their films have been covered
Nice.
on our network. So if you ever,
Nice.
want
Yeah.
hours and hours of things that you probably already know about those actors, go check out Winona Forever and Keanu Club.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the Dracula one I very much enjoyed. The Nickelodeon one again I very much enjoyed, and I also again it's like this is a personal bias, but the Big Trouble in Little China one I thought was
Oh yeah,
great.
that's another really popular one.
Yeah.
That one-
I was glad that they answered it the way they did because like Batman and Beyond, I was like, you don't seem like Batman Beyond.
No,
leads, but,
Batman
you know,
Beyond.
It's
No.
Getting
different
back to Will
altogether.
Friedle,
Yeah.
the voice of Batman Beyond. Anybody
Yes,
know
Right.
that?
just
Yeah,
anything
uh-huh.
from Batman and on.
Yeah,
is
Batman
good. I mean, they're all
forward.
like I said, they're all good, but I think those got better.
Yeah. Once we added that element, I think it was
Yeah.
it got more fun.
But I just
So.
always say pick a movie you like, or pick a movie
Sure.
that you have been like, you know what, is that movie worth watching? And then listen to us talk about it, and
Right.
you'll decide whether you
Decide if you want to
Right.
watch it or not. Yeah. Because we've heard that
we get
too.
both. We
Uh-huh.
get people who use it as a watch along, who just
Yeah.
put it on while they're watching a movie, and it goes because we kind of go through the whole script.
Mhm. Yeah.
It kind of goes along, and then we get people who say, "Oh my god, I really want to see Drop Dead Gorgeous now. I never saw it."
Right.
Or like I had to go watch this movie again because I love it so much, and I want
Right.
to hear you talk about it. So we get all manner of ways. that they
And
listen.
at least once we've gotten like, you know what? I never want to see this movie.
yeah,
because
we've gotten ones who are like, you know what? I don't need to see it now.
I never, it would ruin it. It would
was
ruin it to
Tommy.
see it.
It was Tommy the
Yeah.
musical, because we went way back and did
Mhm.
Tommy, and I think somebody was like, "I don't ever need to see
Nope.
this," but it was hilarious listening to you explain it.
Yeah. So
I will say, like the Dracula one, I got mad at you because you were like, Billy Campbell, never heard of him. Like, he's the fucking Rocketeer. And you're like, I haven't seen the Rocketeer. And I'm like, you need to fucking go see the Rocketeer and do an episode about the Rocketeer.
we
which you
get
still haven't
that a
done.
lot.
So
We did a movie on another podcast
Mhm.
where Billy Campbell again
Yes.
was the lead, and
Yeah.
we
Yes,
did
out
not
there.
realize we
Out
didn't
there.
realize we're like, that guy looks familiar, and he
Right.
goes,
It's the
And I
Rocketeer. We're
was
like, it comes up all the
Get me every
We are
time.
haunted by the Rocketeer.
we are.
well, one way to exercise the demon of the Rocketeer is to fucking watch it and do an episode about it. 'Cause,
And
like,
then I've also had people though tell me, "Fuck the Rocketeer. Rocketeer
Right.
sucks." So
No.
I
Yes.
mm-mm, mm-mm.
I don't
They
know.
are- that is the wrong opinion. That is
You know
incorrect.
what? We might have to do like live, we'll try to do it to where you can't hear it this time, but like a live watch along where we actually sit down and watch the Rocketeer. Like we're watching
Okay.
the
Or
Rocketeer
we
on
would
Saturday.
Have to wear headphones or something.
It's
Because
Well, yeah.
otherwise we won't have any idea what's going on.
Well, yeah, of course. Of course.
I stand the Rocketeer. No, it's really true though. I actually I went back. I watched it with my wife had never seen it, and we watched it last summer together. And she thought it was great, and it still really holds up really nicely. It's a very sort of like old fashioned, just great adventure, fun movie with great performances. So
Welcome to Rocketeer the podcast.
I genuinely mean it. I would do it, man.
How is this
I genuinely
still going? Not that this is awful.
Who knows? It's nice to talk about better movies. All right. Yeah, cool.
It's got to be better than this.
Well, next episode we're going to crawl inside the mind of a very good movie. So hint, hint.
Oh,
hint,
is
hint.
that? Oh, that is next. Oh, you're right.
I think I know what it is.
Mm-hmm. The least John Cusack movie ever made. All right. With that, where can the folks in the internet domain find you on the internet domain?
For listening, you can find us everywhere you find podcasts: Spotify, Apple, all the little places. We're all the places.
We out, yeah.
Our Instagram, where you can see our ridiculous, terrible photo edits of us in all of these movies, is on Instagram, Doom Generation Pod, Twitter, Doom Gen Pod, and that's pretty much the best places to get at us. And I am very responsive to our
Nicole's
internet, unfortunately.
Nicole is our hub of the media.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the type of job where I can just reply to stuff almost whenever, and I unfortunately do so. You can get at me up until 2 a.m. Standard Time.
Get at her at any time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. Great having you. We'll have to have you back sometime, Joey.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun.
As always. And
thank you. Watch out for frogs.
Watch out for frogs. We'll see you next time.